The best defense is a good offense. You got your main POC, and then of course we want to know who their boss is. Then below that, is anybody reporting to them that's kind of an up-and-comer? It's 3 people across, 3 people up and down. So we call the concept the 3
Makes
by
a big
3.
plus.
I call it, and then I put dashes around those outer circles because that's putting a fence around your account. There's 3 levels that we want to have with influencers. We got to identify them first, then get access to those people, and then influence them. Like go deeper with your people and go higher and wider with their account.
That's exactly right. Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. Everybody, welcome back to Building Your Sales Engine. Host Mark McGraw here. You might know that if you've been listening and following. By the way, if you have not, please subscribe so you get notifications when we launch new episodes, which we are doing all the time. And we are coming up to our 50th episode right around the corner, which we are super proud of for making the commitment and getting through and doing as many episodes as we have. So that has been a blast, continues to be a blast, and will continue to be a blast. So in today's episode, I've got Josh Pitchford together, and we're going to sit and we're going to talk a little bit about expanding relationships in existing accounts, identifying all the cast of characters. Lots of good notes inside of here for how do we make sure that we are touching all the bases within accounts. So let's dive into the episode. Josh Pitchford, welcome back, of course. Good to see you.
Mark McGraw, thanks for having me. Always fun to do these and catch up with you.
It is
and
fun.
Actually put on recording what we talk about a lot around here, right?
Indeed, both with clients and then, I don't know if everybody knows this, but we sell in addition to train. There's probably a lot of quote training companies out there that what they do is that they teach you something out of a book, but they haven't sold in 20 years. I haven't sold in 20 minutes. So
I beat you at 12.
Oh, okay. So just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So we live, the things that we talk about. So,
absolutely.
And the reason I bring it up is today we're going to talk about how do we make sure that when we have an account that we're working, that we're constantly expanding relationships within the account, higher, deeper, wider, all of the above. And Josh, let's start with why is that so important? And there could be 100 answers to this, but tell us what you think is why it's so important to have like expanded relationships. Yeah,
I have a line that when I'm training this concept and making this point with one of our clients is, that this has been used in a lot of different areas, but the best defense is a good offense. And so, one of the things that we're always looking at, the big why behind it is it just makes you more sticky. The more relationships that you have, the more people that know you, the more people that you can find actionable pain with, it's just better. Unfortunately, some sellers out there, they get a main point of contact, POC, right? And they end up getting addicted, if you will, to talking to those people because they're the ones that, answer the phone. They're the ones that answer the emails, and it's just easy. And they get addicted to talking to that person. That's kind of their primary point of contact.
Yeah, we've laughed internally that, everybody can get in on the joke because I used to have, prior to Sandler, I had an account and it was I'd always go have lunch with Grant. That was the guy. And
absolutely.
I remember at one point after 18 months of having lunch with Grant, and that was my main point of contact, I remember thinking, one more lunch with Grant is not going to win me any more business here. And I love the guy. I could always score a sales call on my record for the week by having lunch with Grant. But there's a limitation to that. And at some point, by the way, I think when you start ending up with one point of contact, what ends up starting happening is the rest of the organization looks at you as their guy.
Absolutely.
And you kind of get married to one person, and it gets harder to establish relationships with others if we get too focused on one individual.
No doubt about it. That's fun. That's funny that you said another lunch with Grant story. I was actually doing a coaching call with one of our clients a little earlier today, and she was talking about, doing visits on accounts. And I said, well, let's keep in mind, we get paid for results, not visits. And it was just one of those moments that what are we doing to leverage those visits as opposed to just, buying lunch once again.
Are they quality calls?
Are they quality calls? Is there an upfront contract in place? Is there things that we're going to talk about? Is there a clear next step versus, hey, just come visit me again?
Are we professionally visiting?
Yeah, the milk run, so to speak. And sellers that want to drive out there, that's exhausting to them to do activities that don't have some sort of, payoff for the behavior. That there's either something's moving forward, we're getting toward PO, whatever it happens to be. So, one thing, a concept that, we talked about offline that I want to talk through is, and I know our listeners are out there, and so I'll describe this a little bit. It's the 3x3. And, if you'll imagine this is that there's a circle in the middle, and that's your main point of contact. And that's where a lot of people are hanging out, doing another lunch, it's easy. What we want folks to do is look either side of that person. Like, who fills in for that person? If they go on vacation, if they win the lottery, whatever. I used to say hit by a bus, but that wasn't so nice. So change that up a little bit. And so you got your main POC and then have a couple of people either side that kind of fill in for that person when available. And then, of course, we want to know who their boss is, your main POC. And then below that, who is anybody reporting to them that's kind of an up-and-comer? And so if you think about that in your mind's eye, it's 3 people across, 3 people up and down. Mm-hmm. So we call the concept the 3x3.
Makes a big plus.
It does make a big plus. It's a great way to put it. Thanks for the help there. The way I always think about that is if you put that in that big plus and you have those circles, I call it, and then I put dashes around those outer circles because that's putting a fence around your account. Because here's the thing, your competition is not going to prospect your main point of contact. You're fostering that relationship. They're gonna find a wedge in that account with the higher level person, somebody off to the side. They're gonna get somebody else's ear versus fighting an uphill battle. So
it's a really good point. I didn't think about that so much, actually. Unless, of course, your main point of contact, if you're weak with that main point of contact, they might. But if you're likely, that's a coach, that's an advocate, it's somebody. And I love the fence thing. That's a great way of looking at it.
Absolutely.
And so if you think about that grid, then what we want to do is make sure that we're touching all 5 of those people that we've identified at a minimum. That's to me, that's table stakes.
Right.
But at a minimum, we should have 5 people if the account is significant enough that we've got touch points. And I think most sellers have to figure out for their line of business, is that weekly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? Whatever it is,
sure,
but some frequency such that you've got enough depth, and that's the 3x3 principle, which is a great way to look at it.
It's a great visual to look at, and I would encourage those looking at it to kind of look at it visually if that fits your learning style. But then obviously you got to do something to keep up with it. And I know in the past, we've even had an account and then on a spreadsheet. And then you can just color code it, red, yellow, green. How often have I talked to them? Where's my relationship with them? And you can color code it even in a spreadsheet to get started if you have a few accounts in it. Makes you ultra intentional about protecting that account and protecting and growing the relationships.
And are you staying in touch with them? I know in our CRM, we have a field called influencer.
Yeah.
And an influencer is someone who may not be the ultimate decision maker, but they certainly influence the account. And, these days, it seems to me, it used to be that there was one ultimate decision maker, and you could argue there still is today. But that ultimate decision maker takes a lot of input from a lot of people. And, you've seen the data that shows that there's now 14 influencers on an enterprise sale these days.
It's unbelievable, the people that get their fingerprints. And that's a term we use all the time. It's unbelievable. Everybody wants to get everyone's input. And it's a little bit of, hey, we got to have collaboration. We want to spread this risk around.
It's another good reason.
Because you think about the Sandler investment step, there's a risk investment, and they're lowering that risk investment by getting others' input around that. All the more reason to grow those relationships inside of current accounts as through a new account as you're going through the process.
So. It's become much more democratic in that sense of, buy-in from a lot of different people.
No doubt.
And for that reason, you have to go wider, deeper, higher within an account. I'll tell you, Josh, another thing that I run into is that that a lot of times what's going on is there's changes going on. I saw not too long ago that like the average lifespan within an employee that's a CRO or a CMO, it's like 18 to 24 months is their tenure, which is an incredibly short period of time if you're trying to make changes, and unfair in many respects. But as a result of that, maybe not every role changes that quickly, but there is constant change within accounts. And if you're not covering a lot of bases, it's likely that your main point of contact may not be there at some point, and you're going to be left out in the cold.
Absolutely. We talk about all the time that one of the first questions we should be asking in a longer enterprise account while you're growing the relationship and fostering a current account, all those things is what's changed.
Yeah.
You just basically assume it, because the one thing we do know, it's always going to be changing. And the more you assume it and are ready for it and read the tea leaves into the future of what could happen, that could have a huge, massive impact on you being able to get ahead of things and react appropriately to those.
I know we joke that, the weather's always changing, at any given time. You look at an account, the weather's changing, whether or not there's new management, whether or not there's a change in your main point of contact, whether or not a competitor has shown up, whether or not if you're trying to win the business, a competitor has screwed up. And depending upon the individual business, in a lot of cases, every 90 days, the weather's changing and there's some event that's causing either for you or against you, depending on where you are.
Absolutely.
In the accounts. You got to constantly be looking for the changes that are occurring within an account and protect yourself by having a lot of different relationships.
Absolutely. And I want you to talk to, whether or not what could change, what could happen, but also thinking about the impact on your account if that happens. You want to talk just a minute about the bond proofing your account?
Yeah. I think people that have a decent size account, I think they can sit down and do a quick exercise that we refer to as bomb proof your account, BOMB, bomb proof. And the idea behind it is that you think about what could go wrong. What are the scenarios or situations that occur that could be detrimental to my account and my relationship in the account? If the stock market, blew up and it's a publicly traded company, and maybe that's outside of your control, I tell you the number one when I work and we consult with this, the biggest fear most sellers have is that their main point of contact goes away.
Absolutely, number one. Hence why we're talking about it.
That's exactly right. So if you think about, Josh, what are some of the tools that that are really good tools to help somebody start to either visualize or start to map out, like, where are the cast of characters, where are the people, and how do I get in touch with them?
So the 3x3 is the big one. The other one that we should talk about is the relationship maps.
Love them.
Relationship maps are the 3x3 concept on steroids. That's what I call it when I'm training, teaching, and coaching this stuff. And so the thing about the relationship map, it gets much deeper than a 3x3. A 3x3 is a quick little back of the napkin sketch for that any seller should be able to do for a lot of their accounts. If not with a quick LinkedIn search, they should be good. The relationship map takes a little bit more time because there's a special sauce in the relationship map. Number one, it takes on a little bit more of a hierarchy look. It's not an org chart. Org chart's much more formal than what we're talking about here, but it does have the look of the hierarchy inside of, say, an enterprise account. But the extra special thing that it has is you have solid lines in an org chart, the dashed lines. Who has whom's ear? there's always those, who's going to lunch with who, right? Like they have a good relationship. Maybe they don't direct report. Maybe they're a couple of levels above. They just happen to go to lunch all the time because they're friends. There's a past relationship from a previous company. Who knows? Those dashed lines make a heck of a lot of difference in who they're really going to. It may not just be perfectly hierarchical, like a, military or something like chain of command. They've got their ear.
And those, a lot of times, those relationships that have the one person has an ear of someone else, that's a dotted line. They don't report directly to each other, but they can influence each other. That's within the organization. Sure. The other one that we see a ton are people outside the organization. And these are people that, I'll give you an example. Well, us, as an example, sometimes we'll be asked from one of our clients about, hey, what do you know about this software? And now all of a sudden if we have information about that software, we influence that software decision, but we're nowhere on the org chart. We're dotted line in there. And the seller who's selling, let's say, the software, they may or may not know that we exist. And but if you look for these dotted lines, you start to see them. Josh, another place, I get excited talking about this. The other place to go look for this is if you have clients, or if your customers, or you're selling through a distribution channel, through some channel partner relationship, there's a lot of dotted lines there. Oh. And that's a big difference between a relationship map and an org chart, because you see these other people on the paper that aren't actually part of the organization.
Absolutely. And visually looking at it, there's all kinds of tools out there, and we're not going to get into all that. There's all kinds of tools to do this. But when you start putting it out visually, you start seeing things that maybe are rolling around your head. But when you put it down, it just has a different impact. You start thinking about, ooh, we could run into this, we could run into that. And you kind of have that reaction you had just a minute ago. It's like, I get excited about this. But also there's going to be a little trepidation because you're like, oh man, that could be my gotcha.
I don't know that person.
I got to take action on that, right?
Or I haven't talked to them in a while.
Absolutely. And, I made reference to this earlier, but the whole red, yellow, green thing on the relationship side, on a relationship map, we can go a little bit different, more in depth and call out the advocacy score that we've talked about previously. The advocacy score is from detractor to champion. We've all, those are pretty common terms in sales, but what we advocate is to put it from a -5 +5 on an integer scale and thinking about, okay, what can I do with every action to move someone to the right on that integer scale? I always make a point. You're not going to take a detractor at a -3, -4 and make them a +5 in one fell swoop. You got to be intentional about what can I do to move them to a -2, then a -1, and then neutral, 0, neutralizing, a detractor. That's what it's all about. +1, so forth, so on and so forth. But really being intentional about what am I doing to always move these relationships to the right on the integer scale.
And if you have that put down on a relationship map, you can color code some of these boxes and you can start to remind yourself of who's for you, who's against you. I was doing one not too long ago and I looked down at it and I'm like, I haven't leveraged this person over here. I've got a great relationship with them, but I haven't talked with them in 60 days. They're not a main, point in this particular transaction or sale, but they're off to the side, but not so far off that I couldn't reach back out to them. The minute I did it, good things happen. And those are the things that happen with relationship maps. And I'll tell you, Josh, I just had an idea. Why don't we make an arrangement? We'll put a link to a template for a relationship map in Excel. And let's make that available to folks. If you want to get it, put it over in the show notes and you can go grab a copy of it over there.
That would be a good idea for people to do to, start seeing visually what we're talking about and start making it applicable to their particular accounts. The other thing that I'm always looking at, and I made reference to this a little bit earlier about, when you start putting this stuff down, it gets it out of your head and it puts it on something more concrete. Because at the end of the day, there's 3 levels that we want to have with, influencers, the cast of characters, all of those things. We got to identify them first. Who are they? Then get access to those people and then influence them. what we're talking about here at a very surface level is let's just start by identifying who they are. Because sometimes we know they exist, but we really don't think about them all that much because guess what? We're talking to our POC all the time, our main POC. And so
point of contact.
And when we put that down, all of a sudden we're like, that person could have more influence on this than I think. And all of a sudden we can be more intentional about getting in touch with them. So just getting it out of your head, not on paper or on a file, you know what I mean? Will allow us to identify more.
I had a client say to me, that's one of the things I love about what we get to do is we learn so much from people and a different view that they have. This client said to me that relationships maps have been great for them on certainly not every account. You got to be selective. They take a few minutes to put together. So if you want to do it on a serious account. But what they said is yes, it helps me be able to identify the depth and breadth of the players. But they said it really helps me communicate to my internal team of resources on my own company because I can put this in front of them and now I can talk to my boss or I can talk to this engineer that I'm working with and they can see the playing field very clearly by having a visual on it by which they couldn't any other way.
So such a good point.
Such a great point.
Sellers have so much tribal knowledge in their head that the sales engineer, their boss, all that stuff, they just don't know because they're not in the account all day, every day. And that's where, that relationship map helps memorialize all that for everyone.
And I think it helps us too to be able to accomplish the goal of expanding. So let's talk for a minute about how do you expand in an account? Well, if you have a relationship map, what I can start to do with that is I can start to look at the people that are on the client side and then map those roles and relationships potentially to people in my own company.
Sure.
So I can navigate relationships. We call this mapping to the buyer's network. So you take your organization and maybe identify some key people that could form great relationships with similar rolled people in the client's organization.
Yeah.
And now those dotted lines become people in your own company that you're facilitating relationships with and you're expanding that way as well. It's so cool to have this as a tool.
I think I think what you're describing there, I want everyone to get it. And what I mean by that is the better driver initially of this, of thinking about who would they find value from? Not just finding pain and selling more stuff. At the end of the day, yes, we're there to expand the account, drive more revenue. That's what our role is. But at the end of the day, if we start with thinking about who on our side would bring more value to who on their side, if we go to that part, and that's part of doing this, is that you get ahead of it. When you build the relationship, you don't have to do it just when you want to sell them something. You've got to get a bit more strategic and say, hey, who can I put in touch with them that's going to help them find more value?
Yeah, that's a great point. So you might have an engineer talk to an engineer. You might have somebody in accounting talk to your accounting. And if you're looking down on this as managing the account, you're looking down at a chessboard.
Yep.
And it's just so helpful on that front as well.
No doubt. And I love that image that we have that we talk about all the time is the image from above a chessboard to being on the chessboard and those big, huge chessboard. I love that image. And it's great imagery that if you're in the game, guess what? Your viewpoint's not as good as being above the game.
It's so true. I was, you're referring to, I went to the beach one day and they had out by the beach these 4 foot tall chess pieces on almost, it wasn't life size, but it was half life size chessboard. And I thought to myself, if you're a piece on the chessboard and you're looking out at the landscape of where the positions of the other pieces on the chessboard are, it's hard to get a good visual of it.
Absolutely.
If you're at the eye level of the king or queen or rook or whatever, it's hard to see the landscape. But when you get above it and you look down at these pieces, and that's what relationship maps, and that's what taking strategic time to think about how do I expand business. Now, Josh, I think that all of those are all great points on the strategic side. If we just went down to the tactical side and we just said, how do we make sure that we get to know people as people? Because at the end of the day, I've joked before, companies don't buy your solution. people within the company buy the solution. So you got to build rapport with people and expand that way as well. What are some of the best practices you've implemented in the tactical side of building relationships?
It's very simple and basic, but you've already alluded to it. You gotta learn about the person. It's learning. It's not just their 9 to 5, so to speak. That's one persona. There's a human being behind there.
5 to 9.
Right, the 5 to 9, the AM or the PM, the 5 to 9. We're not going to go down the TikTok road here of what's your 5 to 9 after your 9 to 5. But, understanding what they do with those 5 to 9. It's if somebody's talking to me, there's going to be a conversation around, hey, I'm, sales trainer, coach, all that stuff during the day. But afterwards, I become, soccer dad. That I don't play soccer. I just take kids to soccer practice, right? They got to understand that I got this other stuff going on out here. That's who I am, right? And that's that other role and persona in life. But if you start to see the human, and they start to see that you want a relationship with that person, not just the persona that can sign the PO, it's a game changer.
Makes a huge difference.
Intentional about that.
Sandler, David Sandler, the founder of our company ages ago, he would call it a fuzzy file.
Oh yeah.
And what that is that whether it's in CRM or notes or whatever is that if you hear something about someone, put it in the file, collect it, ask them about it. And this may be a little bit old school, but I think it's also something that's been lost over the ages too, where we are collecting information about someone. Let me give you a good example. I have a good friend of mine who's also a client, and at the time that I first met him, we had first gotten to know each other, and he's a very kind of high dominant, direct, right to the point kind of guy. CRO, almost $1 billion company. Sure. Great. Turns out, wonderful guy, but he came across a bit, I don't know, tough. First time I met him. We were talking about getting another date up on the calendar, and I said to him, hey, I can't make that date. Can we push it out another week because I'm meeting my father out in Jackson Hole? Weeks go by. We end up getting, after, several weeks go by, I get back on the phone with him. First thing he did was ask me, how was the trip with my dad?
That's a master.
That's a master right there.
That's perfect.
And this is a guy that I've since gotten to know very well, and just a great guy. But it's being intentional about listening to what's going on in the other person's life and then making a note about it. And I can tell you, I have gotten 1,000 times better at that over the years by learning that as a learned skill. That is not something that comes naturally, at least to me, but you can learn it.
No doubt.
By paying attention.
You got to take the time to write it down.
You got to. And have a system.
That's where I'll be the first one to admit you're much better at it than I am, to take the time to just write the note down. And I've got to get better at it. I'll call myself out. I've got a weird memory at times.
You do. You're really good at remembering things. Like creepy weird.
And then sometimes I'm like, man, I let that go, and I should do it. So that's even a good reminder for me that, writing down those personal notes, dates of kids, right? Are they going on a vacation? Ask them about it. They'll love it. And if you remember that stuff, and we can't expect to remember everything, but care enough to write it down still counts for something.
Yeah. And for us, we put it in our CRM. We got a field in the CRM, personal notes.
That's what I mean by write it down. Don't put it on a sticky note. Sticky notes are not allowed.
That's right. Not going to do any good.
That's right.
One last thing that I think is worth going here just real quickly with, and that is, you've read Unreasonable Hospitality, have you not?
Absolutely. You know that I have. It's like a book report around here. We got to do it. Unreasonable Hospitality. If we did this without talking about that, we'd be crazy.
We'd be crazy because the book is Unreasonable Hospitality, and I think it's Will Guidaro,
whatever.
Guidaro,
yeah.
Is that it?
Something like that.
It's Will
G.
And so
big, bright, yellow book.
The principle of the book is it's the story of 11 Madison Park and how they became the #1 restaurant in the world. And the author, Will, one of the big takeaways is that what they do is they make a special experience by recognizing something personal about the person who's coming into the restaurant. The one wonderful example that I remember from this is that they had done some research on a couple and found out that they were school teachers and they had been saving for a year to come into the number one restaurant, and they ended up gifting them the meal.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. What a great story. And, the point of it, though, is that if you can identify something that somebody's going through, let's say they're having a kid, can you do something that's a little bit extra for them to be memorable?
Sure.
And to bring something good? And that came out of that book, Unreasonable Hospitality.
Yeah, it's such a good mindset to have, to use Sandler vernacular, put it in your cookbook. Find and be intentional about finding ways to show that unreasonable hospitality. It's something, unexpected that people just like, wow, I wasn't expecting that at all.
It's above and beyond.
And it's just because you're paying attention.
That's right.
Will and his team at 11 Madison Park were next level because they would do it off the cuff. We're talking about expanding relationships inside of accounts that we're working all the time. We should have it even easier to be paying attention and being able to do that inside these accounts. You just got to be intentional about it. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit, much like the writing it down things, I'm not known as the best gift giver.
Well, and here's the beautiful thing. I think these days you don't have to be a great gift giver because we have AI.
Absolutely.
Act as a great gift giver. Here's the, you can ask it. And by the way, Etsy is a great resource we found for that. And, simple things. Somebody was going through COVID not too long ago. I don't know about you. A milkshake from Chick-fil-A is the best thing if you're not feeling well.
Absolutely.
So would DoorDash something along those lines to him. And so I hope that maybe some of our listeners will pay attention to that and be thinking about how do you expand relationships, not just in terms of new relationships, but deepening the relationships that you already have as well.
No doubt about it. Go deeper with your people and go deeper, higher and wider with their account.
That's exactly right. Nothing bad is going to happen. It's going to prevent a lot of crazy things. In fact, even coming in here, you just announced to me that you heard that one of our clients they were managing 2 large divisions of one of our clients. Now they're going to manage one. We got a new player in over there that, this happens every single minute of every single day.
Absolutely.
So
if we do our work, it's not such a big deal. We're just continuing to develop the relationship and be there to serve.
And be at the top of our game. And these are all tools to help us do that.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. We'll leave it at that. We'll come back in for another episode here soon. I'll just throw this out to all the listeners. Hey, if you're looking for help with respect to building your sales engine, man, I'm biased. I just am. There's no better place to come than Sales Engine here, and we are a Sandler office where we coach and train the Sandler methodology. So we always love hearing from people that want to go build their team, get better, build reliable, proven, transferable systems for sales. We're here for you. Reach out to us. Always happy to help. And if you're a current client, feel free to refer us somewhere as well. Got that all in.
Absolutely. That's great work. That's what we're here for, and we love doing it.
We do. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.